Josh again with another episode back here with Wendy for our Q&A, meditation Q&A. This is number 18, it says up there that I put
Woohoo.
earlier. And we're going to call this one, Wendy, what's going on?
Well, I don't know, but I'm in Queensland. I am calling from Gubby Gubby country. Oh, that's I've just put the YouTubers come up. So anyway, I had to suddenly silence that because it comes up and then I'm like, quick, mute, mute, mute. Um, so yeah. So basically it's hot here today and I have, as I was saying just before we came on air, been a bit flat. I have this advocacy movement and I've had this big thing happening and I've suddenly gone, oh, I'm exhausted. And I've been trying to push for something and it's not going anywhere in terms of expecting particular outcomes. And it's one thing to say, I don't want to have an outcome. And then it's another thing to actually go, oh, gee, I've been expecting a lot of outcomes and I realized I can't do it. So I've just decided to change my tack. I've got my little podcast that I do for my transport stuff and that just hanging out with people who like me, who want to be doing that, that's such a great thing. It's so helpful because I think sometimes in certainly in the spiritual world you can think, no, I'm above it and I'm more than human, and then you go, no, I'm truly human. Definitely. It's very hard to deal with no all the time. And if you have a parent like that, like certainly I have that, and yeah, that's hard work. And it's good sometimes to go, you know what? It's not always good to stay in that space. You got to take care of your body and mind. So that's short answer. That's how I am.
Yeah, I mean, this is life, right? And sometimes it gets really freaking intense. And we do need to pull back and do more self-care and stuff. And other times it's not like that. I mean, it's an oversimplification, but yeah, we do what we can, right? And meditation helps with that, obviously. It can. For me anyway. Now we're going to call this one How Time Meditates. So um, I had a description here. Basically, we can explore how our views, perceptions, and experience of time influence colors and flavors our meditation practice in our everyday lives. So, Wendy, how does time uh, tie into this? Would you say any perceptions of time? You know, here in Denmark, I think one of the words for time is klokken. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right.
That would be the watch, the clock, you know.
Right. So this whole
Yeah.
notion of time in and of itself is kind of like a construct in the mind, a social agreement that we all agree upon. That this thing says a certain time, and it's all synced up by this nuclear agency somewhere, right? They have this nuclear clock, and they set the exact time, and all of our clocks are synced to it. And who are these people? Can I write them a letter? Don't they know nobody likes daylight savings time and they don't listen to us? So I mean, I'm joking a little half serious, but I'm half serious here too. You know, I don't know. So it's just this weird notion. And then what is the speed of time? I'm throwing a lot out here. I put this to a guy who was into math and he came up with the answer. It was one. But I don't know, like, how do you measure time? But to me, at the end of the day, it's this agreed upon perception. I'll go into my own experiences and stuff like that, but I want to throw this back to Wendy since I put a lot out there right away.
So thanks for just kind of hearing me out while I was slightly going, oh my goodness, I'm like really a bit burnt out. So time, it's an interesting one. I actually listened to a podcast this week, and it was about how do you translate time. So you've talked about klocka, and then you have tid. So there's another word for time as well. It's a different thing. So one is how much is the hour, if you like, and then what's your sense of time? What is your duration time? I guess I think probably that's what it would be in Danish, and if I think about it, that's what it is in Swedish. Um, so, but in some languages, they don't have any time words. They don't have the concept of it. And I don't know how that works. So in one of the Aboriginal languages here, They actually have four times. They have past, present, and future. But then they have this eternal time, like, well, we humans will always be walking. So that there is a particular conjugation that you use for those types of activities, of the constancy of doing the same thing over millennia. So I think that's quite an interesting idea. So there's that. And yeah, I mean, it depends on who you ask as to what time means, and it depends when and where. And yeah, you can have, so you mathematically, it's sort of time is measured according to distance, but that's a particular way of looking at time. It's not, I don't know that I necessarily, my perception, when you're, my life flashed before my eyes. So how, I have not had that experience, but if you had had that experience, what would be the sense of time? Because are you talking about the life, or are you talking about that? So anyway, that's off topic, but something in there.
Well, there's really so much to this, that the flashing before one's eyes. People call that a life review. And that's a really common thing when people that have near-death experiences and things like that. So it seems like one's having memories of their entire life compressed down into a short amount of time. So this is the relative perception of time, right? We all know Einstein's thing, but I don't know. Because this is something we all experience too, right? Sometimes time seems to go by very quickly. This obvious notion, sometimes it drags on and on forever. Hopefully when you're watching our show here, it will, go quickly. But
Totally, totally, totally. It's like, oh wow, it's a gripping episode. Definitely, definitely.
And there's all, I was contemplating on this earlier, and there's all kinds of other different perceptions of time. Now, where I think it affects our practice or our spiritual practices is this notion of, oh, there's so many of these FOMO, fear of missing out, right? I don't have enough time. I want all these things. I got to make sure that I don't miss out, because I only have so much time here on earth, and I don't want to miss exactly. But what I found is we're going to have the experiences we're meant to have anyway. It seems like, I mean, that's another perception. Another one is, oh, geez, like I just mentioned, this is never going to end. Longer stretches in our lives, right? Like, I've been trying this. How do I get out of this? It's been, this particular challenge or issue has been going on forever. Then it could lead to all these things. Oh, I'm dumb. I'm stupid. Why haven't I figured this out yet? This is nothing for so many other people. Then we start the comparison conceit and things like this. And that's not helpful either. And we know nothing lasts forever, right? And we can, every time, if there is a repeating, we can get a broader perspective on it. I talk about the spiral staircase, climbing that up. And so we can see a larger area of this. Some things go by really quick, right? Hey, I don't have enough time. I really cherish this person, and I'm not going to have enough time. So I'm constantly thinking, oh, I want more time. I want more time. And then I'm not there present fully to value the time that we do have together. And then there's certain people that we don't like. It's just, oh God, not this person again. I'm already here like 10, 15 minutes. How do I get out of this? Why is this always happening? Waiting. Some people have a really hard time waiting for things. They get impatient. This is with patience. And yeah, so these are a few practical ones that we deal with every day, or, commonly, these perceptions we have.
Yeah, so as you were saying that, I was thinking I'm one of those people who's like, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I haven't got time. I haven't got time. And there's this idea of time being commodified. But here we are. We're talking about meditation and time. And I had this experience where I saw time. I don't know. Apparently, this is what they're starting to look at in physics. This idea of time is you what I saw was that you have a moment, and then you have kind of air, and then you have another moment, and then you have air, and then you have another moment. And in each of those moments, it was sort of digital rather than analog, I would say. And sort of in each moment that you're doing something, you get a new set of options. But in each time you do something, you have a new set of options. So I might be saying something now, and then I've got, well, what are my options? I can unplug the microphone. I can scream at you. I can, I don't know, the bomb might land, whatever. And say the bomb lands, and then it's like, okay, well, what are my options? If I'm alive, if I'm dead, whatever. So all these things are sort of separate incidents, and we can be conscious about how we use our time and conscious about the decisions about how we use time, or we can be passive recipients. I was in a group, one of these coaching groups, and somebody said she has bipolar, and the coach said, so are you in sort of in charge of what happens, or are you being carried by it? And are you the agent of what happens, or are you being carried by the energy of this mania? And I think often we think that we are carried by the energy of what of this time thing that it has to be. But we're not necessarily realizing that we have agency in that space. And I think when you're in meditation, you can start to slow down what happens in the mind to be less of a passive ride and more of an agentic decision. So I think that, I don't know if that is a useful way of talking about it.
This is a really good point. I mean, I've dipped my toes into the Abhidhamma waters. You heard of that third basket of the canon, and I think Mahayana has a Abhidharma, but this is a really vast and complex, higher psychological version of the Dhamma that was, from what I understand, it was added later on. But it's fascinating to me. So they talk about these mind moments, and there are a ridiculous amount of mind moments, like in every second. I think that there was some kind of debate where if there's um, something like, do they actually have a measurable, like you could put like 1/25,000th of a second on there or something, so I'm making that up, or is it just like this instant? And supposedly these happen so quickly that as meditation practice deepens for some practitioners, they can discern more and more of these mind moments, and then all the different things that can possibly go with them. Now, and Wendy pointed out these seeming choice points that happen or could potentially happen. And the area you call, I think some people call bhavanga, this state of resting consciousness as part of a mind. Anyway, I don't know enough about it. I know some terminology, but until I can see it and know it in my own practice, then it's just all kind of conjecture for me, or information. But it does seem that way in my experience too, that, moment by moment, and that's a whole nother thing too. A moment, by the time we almost discern what a moment is or when that moment is, it's already gone,
Well,
and so
yes, of course, because
we
the
talk about the
discernment is
present. Yeah.
so the discernment is the separation from what is here. And I think
Mm,
we often get caught in the discernment
mm.
view rather than the here it view. Sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off.
No, it is. And so that's kind of a mind F there in a little bit too, because then that could leave maybe to the perception that we're always behind. If we can't be in each individual moment, we're always reflecting on something that just happened. I wonder. Anyway, that's speculation. But going back to my point here, that we have these seeming choice points from each moment. And as our perception expands, I know early on in my practice or before practice, things seemed more like there wasn't a lot of choices, right? But I think as perception expands, that we can see all these different opportunities. Like, for instance, just go out and walk on a field with grass. I mean, it's crazy to think, but you could actually go up to almost any individual blade of grass. I don't know, and pick that out. I mean, that's a lot of choices. I mean, a lot of mundane, silly choices. And you can take up a blade of grass and you can turn it in all these varying degrees and angles and tear it apart in little bitty shreds. Right? So I mean, this is it's called one of the imponderables in Buddhism, to the karma. So are trying to understand all the ins and outs of karma can be maddening because of all the different. Now, just think when we come into interaction with someone else too. If we have all these choices, and I chose one thing but not another. Oh, what would have happened if I would have chose this? And this other person would have chose this or did this, and then what led them up to this? And it's just almost an incalculable amount of possibilities that could potentially play out, and then the probabilities of how likely one thing. So it will quickly spiral into something that's way not manageable and not worth our sanity to go into to all the full amount of degrees that it can. And now when we put a clock on this and time this stuff, it is kind of like a measuring system. Now, the thing Wendy said too was this sense of agency in it. And I will say a sense of agency, because this is a whole nother thing that I think science is even talking about now. And a lot of people say, well, there is no free will. And I mean, free will, I'm going to put that aside because that's a little bit murky of a
Mm.
concept. I
Yeah.
like to just use choice. Okay. So we all seemingly have choices, but how much are based on our conditioned habit patterns, where we're on autopilot and we just choose based on our habits and all the different things that condition. So I think it's important too, when we look at choice, to how much are things, the causes and conditions around these. So I'm not on one side of the fence or another. Sometimes it seems like some people have a lot of agency, and some people don't seemingly have none. But I don't know where that lies. Now there's something called like will and volition too, right? And then our intention also is another thing in this. If we pay attention to our intention in meditation, it's a really powerful thing. I mean, that's a whole nother topic for almost an entire show. But and then the last thing, the active versus passive. This is really important. I think for the male in particular, that when we sit, then we realize, oh, hey, there's this option of things, allowing things to happen to me instead of me being the active agent doing. That we can open and receive and notice what's already happening, whether we're involved or not, or seemingly involved or not. Yeah, a lot of good points here, Wendy.
So I've just seen that Ms. Reed is with us today. Time reminds me of cycles. They come and go. So they come and go. So being present is a gift. It's got a heart behind it, so I can't actually. Let me see if I can bring that up a little bit.
And
So
I'll
yeah, I haven't finished. Integrate and implement presence in life. So thank you very much, Ms. Reed. It's nice to have you back online. That's very exciting.
And that's a whole nother notion we haven't mentioned yet, is cycles, because we look at, I mean, that's how time was originally measured to begin with, the precessional cycles of the stars and the moon and the sun. And it's all relative based on I mean, if we're viewing it from Earth, it's different from if we were, say, on a different planet somewhere else, right? How they measure time and the rotational bodies and all this stuff. Seasonal change too. Yeah.
Yeah, so it depends. So it turns out that one of the problems that we have, I think, in Western society is humans are very poor at being able to discern change in time. We've got a very narrow window where we can go, okay, I see that change has happened. And I think change is one of those things that you can observe when you sit still for a long time. So if you're rushing around, it's very hard to notice change, in fact, because you're in a state of constant change. You don't have enough time to look at the impact of what else is changing at the same time as you are. So I think there's, yeah, so we're kind of really stupid, I think. This is where I'm kind of getting to, because we think we're really clever, but I think we've basically got a huge case of the Dunning-Kruger effect. We don't know how stupid we are, so we think we're really clever. That's and and I think that's what I learned in meditation about everything. I thought I had to be in control, and then I can yield. This is much better. And one of my lecturers at university, she said, well, it's not that you have choices, it's that you have options. It's not the same thing. So if you're in the supermarket, you have different options. You don't really have many choices because the supermarket is providing you with a selection. So I don't quite know the difference between a choice and an option, but I quite like that as a basic guide to understand, yeah, how to, we are co-creators of what happens in our world. I don't believe we're totally passive, but I think we often do a lot of unconscious, most of our time is making a lot of unconscious decisions about what we do in with our lives in time, and we don't realize that we are always making this decision to go, I'm opting out from making a decision, but the decision to not make a decision is still a decision. And so how we use time is one of those ones. I don't want to know that, tell it to the hand. Essentially, I think we spend a lot of our time not listening, not seeing, not noticing, not and then we just wonder why we don't feel we are connected to where we are. We don't feel present. We don't feel sort of this abundant sensory world because we're so busy moving to the next thing. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting in this talk is they talked about the idea of time. This came into the English language in a really big way, I think, during the Victorian era, when we sort of, so how's things? Yeah, getting there, getting where? Well, kind of nowhere actually. And so this sense of time has pervaded our language, that progress and time are the same thing. And even in thoughts, when we're meditating, we're telling a story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it goes very quickly, and then you get onto the next story and the next story. But there is a linearity to the storytelling, and that's how our minds, as Westerners, we're trained. It's our cultural heritage. Yeah, that's enough.
Yeah, the wow, you brought up all kinds of cool stuff here. This notion of linearity in how we view and perceive time. Yeah, it is really a dumbed down notion too. And this whole thing of not being present and being busy, this speaks to a lot of programs that people are under. By that I mean, like, you know, um, the standard, partner, house, kids, work, eat, sleep, repeat program. That, I mean, this is standard. And if you have any deviation from that, well, then you're not really what the world, I don't know. There's all kinds of political programs, and mainly, and then the other thing, we live like in a story of reality, not in reality itself, because most people do live in a story about reality instead of directly experiencing it most of the times. And I don't think there's anything wrong with this, and I don't think we can, on the ultimate level, I don't think we can get out of all these at least right away. But the thing is, which programs are more healthy, are better for us and others in this, especially in the long term. But time, talk about time being nonlinear or like a spiral mechanism, or cyclical time. And then, this notion of the Dhamma, it's supposed to be timeless. What does that mean? That's a whole other talk that when I was at the monastery, Lumpur Sumedho gave a whole talk about timelessness. And then we go into this notion of change and not being able to see change usually. And this is a big one too. But when we do meditate for any significant duration, I think, or over time with the daily practice, it seems quite easy to notice it more and more easy. And I think a lot of this has to do with subtleness. A lot of us are operating on the external in our everyday world on more of a gross level. But as awareness expands, or what's in the way of blocking it decreases, then our awareness opens up, perception expands, and then we start noticing more and more things. And then on more and more subtle level, we can notice just in our breath how no two breaths are exactly the same, right? If we pay really close attention on finer and subtler levels, it's changing all the time. Now, when we go back into, I think a lot of this has to do with mystery too. One of the reasons that we're not tuned into all this, we think we know all this other things, is we're not tuning into these mysteries of life. They're all around us, right? There's so many of them that science can't explain, that we can't explain, and that we just we write off because, oh, I don't want to spend. Well, there's a lot of reasons people write it off, but there's a lot of stuff we don't know, and that's so bizarre and so mysterious. But then again, the other extreme is we can waste a lot of time, on that when we need to do practical things too. And then the last thing I'll touch on here with this thread is this notion of self and our choices or options. I like that notion of, yeah, they are just options, and we can see more options. And sometimes it seems like we can choose something, and other times we don't seem to have that choice. Or even if we do have it as a choice, we could know that, oh, I don't want to do that because last time I did something like that, it doesn't have this particular outcome. So it's better off me not choosing that, even if I could choose that. But this notion of, well, what is choosing, um, and would I have made the same choices under a different influence, or when I was younger, or when I'm older, or when I'm with this group of people? How would my choices then, or giving these circumstances, right? Or if I had more money or less money? So all these different conditions, and then who actually is choosing that? Is it a memory or a pattern or a habit? Choosing it, is it my likes and dislikes? Is it my rationality? Is it I think I'm making a smart decision? No, I think I'm making a heart-based decision. Or, oh, this is going to be a consciousness expanding thing because of my consciousness is so expanded. Or, oh, I'm little me, I'm so dumb, I need this because I'm so dumb and stupid. Or I don't give it, I don't care, I'm just going to do this anyway, throw all my repercussions to the wind. Or overly cautious. I don't want to do anything because, the consequences seem to be so great all the time. Everything blows up in my face. So I should just sit here and do nothing. So anyway, so on and on and on, right? But what's actually making those choices or has those options? And that's a whole nother notion, exploring self. That's big in the Buddhist practices as well.
Yeah, I mean, our episode today is on time. So, what's the difference? So, look for how the sense of time is formed in your experience. This is a text you put up here on today's page. What does your mind do when you think of a thought of past or future? How do those feel different? What is the difference in the qualities of sensations in the way the head and eyes hold themselves, in where thoughts occur, and in how they feel? Formally experiment with how a sense of time is created here and now, consciously, clearly, in this space, in this immediacy. This begins to create some of the frameworks of insight that will be very useful later. Read that sentence again and see how you immediately perceive the concept of later. So, read that sentence again. So, I'm not sure which one that is, but I'll take one. This begins to create some of the frameworks of insight that will be very useful later. So then, what do you understand by later? So it is really like you. I think you can get really caught up in being arrogant about, not you but anybody, that I've got this. And I think that's the kind of key problem, really, is that we I think this is something about, I don't know, white people or something. There's a real idea that I know what the answer is. I know what they should do. But really, like, no. I don't even know what I think is the right thing for me. Why would I think I know what the right thing is for somebody else? And so this idea of time, I know how you should spend your time. I know what you should do in this moment.
This, this is a really good point, Wendy, and I will just say that yes, absolutely. That's a really good wake up call, especially for me. And this notion my fiance and I joke about all the time is this. I think it's an American saying too. Is, oh, I got this. I got this, bro. I got this. It's so this kind of false empowerment that. But you know what it does speak to too, though. We have there are people that are complete feel helpless all the time, and so that's actually helpful for them. You know what I mean? I can't do this. I'm so helpless. I'm nobody. Little me. Nothing. Insignificant. What difference do I say? What difference does that make? You know. Then I think this little notion of all these bros. I got this, dude. I got this, bro. I think that's it could actually be helpful for some people where we can obviously see where it's a detriment for every, where we can like me finding myself mansplaining things. But this notion of how do we really know what's best for someone? And yes, the one thing I will say though, what this points at, in which I when I catch myself doing that, unfortunately more than I'd like to admit, that it's underneath that though, the heart, it's there to be helpful, right? And this is where the masculine steps on its own feet all the time, that they're trying to fix everything all the time, right? But it does come from a lot of times come from a masculine place of wanting to be helpful and caring, but not really knowing how. And not hammer isn't going to be the best tool for everything. So one of the
Sure.
best ways for me to be helpful a lot of times, and I have to learn this because I'm more practical, right, is just be quiet, be present, and listen. And that is so helpful for so many people. And I keep forgetting that again and again and again. And it comes back and bites me in the butt a lot. So this, and then going to Wendy, I feel you want to say something there, and then we can go back to this, what you read, and we can look at this in a meditative context.
No, I
And
was
I think
going to.
you have some kind of bug there for those just
Yeah, I've
listening
got a
to this. Yeah.
mosquito or something, and it's just kind of
Mhm.
going here, and it goes in my note,
Oh
like it's like right
no.
here, and so I'm a little bit distracted. So
And
I
then you
am
just
very
go like
sorry.
this the whole time.
Yeah, well, if it's like
Oh.
you don't know, it's like in Australia, and I'm in
Yeah.
Queensland, so in Queensland it's like I've never known so many bugs. I
Ah.
have never had so many bites on me.
Oh
It's amazing.
no.
Um, no, I was thinking there about, yeah, about the idea of what I was thinking is, so I have this transport advocacy movement, and we have this amazing app on our phones, and you can take a photograph of a footpath that's broken, or graffiti, or a burnt out car, or an abandoned shopping trolley. You can click on it, do a photo, it tells where it is, and then it goes through to the provider and it says, you have to action that. And it's fantastic. And so I go around the community and I said, there's this amazing app. If you want to get your footpath fixed, this is how you do it. And there's this very interesting response that I get. And it says, well, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm not going to tell council. Council should know that this is a problem. I'm going, well, all that tells me, so now what I do is, all that tells me is you want to be a victim. Oh, I'm here. So, so that I think is a really interesting. Like, I'm quite sharp now because I've heard of it so much. I'm like, well, that just tells me you want to be a victim. So that idea of agency, and when we forgo the sense of power, and it's not a straightforward line. Like, it's not like I'm going to take my energy. It's a sort of a habitual response. And I know that as a woman, I'll often sort of have to yield to a guy, or it feels like I have to yield a lot because it's a guy, and I go, okay, well, you know what you're doing, I don't. And there's a lot of conditioning that comes in that space, and and there is that. So I guess the idea of in relating to this, to time, is that we can we have this idea that you do something once, and that is therefore a decision in that moment. But actually you do lots of decisions, and it becomes very habitual. And this is a lot what we're working with in meditation, is the habitual response, because you're doing the same sort of similar response in similar circumstances over many, many years and decades, that actually by the time you get to my age at 57, then it's like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. But now I'm having to retrain the mind to do that, to respond differently. And that is a sort of, that is a big part of meditation practice, is changing how we respond due to these long-standing um, habits, just always responding similarly. So that is a time mechanism. So there you go. That's the end of my spiel.
No, it is. In well, the whole victim mentality, this victim victimizer or program, it's another program running, I feel. And another way we can look at it is bully victim programming, and then hero. There's the bully, the victim, and then there's the hero. And so these are archetypes that are running in our society quite rampantly. Yes,
I
please.
have to just put in something here. That
Yes.
was one of the weirdest things about watching American sort of social media, like Happy News, is they go, "He's a hero," like he's a hero, and they just, I'm going, he just went and he kind of helped a kid, like he's not a hero. She's not a shero. It's like she just did a sort of an ordinary, boring civic duty. Like, this is just called the social contract. It's not like they're amazing. They just decided they would do the right thing by somebody.
Yep, and then it's loaded too. So it's so much division, and then people use it as a pejorative too. Oh, what a hero that guy was, and so
Okay.
it's been one of these words that have been watered down, and it's not and overdone, overwrought, and it's not helpful anymore. But there is a sense that there's a sense of role models, responsibility, and oh, I'm no hero, and then this kind of defensive modestness that has to, and then nobody will want to take the claim, or the exact opposite. Well, yeah, I am a hero, I need more recognition, and that's me, and pump up my ego. So there's just so many things that can go wrong and do go wrong around this notion, and it's another time to divide people. And so yeah, this, how do we get out of this bully victim hero archetype thing that just gets us way off track? you
Like
know
we have on, in our conversation, we've just been talking about hero, and it's brought us off track. Although I would say in our meditations, we do have a fantasy land which says, I'm the hero, I'm the good guy here, they're bad, and even if I'm bad, actually they just need to know why, the context for it. But because I'm basically a good person, they just didn't try hard enough to look at how good I am underneath my badness. Like, this is how we do. And so this concept, so I think that there is a sort of well, I think what we're talking about a lot here is the notion of storytelling and time in meditation practice.
Yeah, and that's another thing. We can see all these distorted thoughts we have too, right? The opposite of what Wendy was just talking about. Oh, I can never do anything right. Why do I always mess up? in these situations, right? I go to this, I keep trying and I keep failing. I suck. I'm a nobody. So that's the inferior version of this. When we're on the cushion, we can see how the mind will story tell, and then this notion of, oh, okay, I'm going to go talk to this person, and then running all these potential conversations in my head. They're going to say this, and then I'll say this. But then if they call me out on this, then I'll say this, or this, and it's just, it can be really maddening. Or just to sit back and watch the mind have its heyday with things like that. But this sense of notion and time, I never really thought about it. Well, going back to an earlier point too, um, with this in meditation training. So one of the classic meditation objects is the breath. And so this is a great object for so many reasons. One of it is it doesn't have a huge emotional charge. There's so
Well,
many
that's not
times.
always the case.
Not always the case. That's right. It's a good point. Someone that has asthma, breathing issues, has some kind of trauma or abuse around breath. I would just say, I would venture to guess, for a majority of people, though, there's not a lot of emotional charge around it, right? It's not this juicy topic where, okay, it's done this to me and I need to do this, or what can I get from it? It's going to be so great when I get this, or how can I get it? It's a fairly neutral. So for a lot of people, I know for me, it's not very fascinating. It's not very lucrative. It's not very scintillating. And so it takes a lot of time and effort and attention to really get into it. But then once it hits a groove, once that needle gets in the groove, then I can really tune in and dial in and get more absorbed and notice subtleties and notice how it feels really good when I allow it to feel that way. So it gives our attention like a habitual break from all the other habit patterns and tendencies of the mind, and that goes on, and kind of neutralizes that in a way, and creates this container, open space, in order to see things in a different way and to notice what's there, right? And also training this muscle that not everything needs my attention all the time. It's okay to just let things happen in the background, let them play out and do their thing, and not get entangled or involved and jump after them, which I constantly do over and over again in meditation, and then wake up that I have the choice that I can come back to this object and build continuity around it. Now, when we talk about a notion of time in that, the other thing I want to say about when people are practicing jhana meditation, it's one of the jhanic masteries is to emerge at a certain time. I mean, this is these jhana meditators. Okay, I want to come out in exactly 1 hour from now, without any kind of bells or indicators, and they can come out. So this notion that time is kind of created or arbitrary on a watch is real interesting when compared to something like that. How the heck does that happen? This is a common thing. You talk to really deep practitioners of jhana, and this is one of the things they can do. They can set this resolve to emerge in an hour exactly, almost to the minute or second, and they can do it. So how does that work? I've never heard any explanations on this. So that other than the mind can be a very powerful thing, right? Yeah.
So we've just got a new person. Radiant Guardians says, "Hi guys," with a little bit of a wave. So very nice to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us, Radiant
Welcome.
Guardians.
Welcome.
We're now, I think, a team of 4. So we've got 5 people watching now, and I think I'm 2 of them. So, so very nice to have you. Nice to have you join us. And you can think, oh well, I haven't got very many people, but it's just actually so lovely to have people join us. It's so beautiful. Now, my husband's just mowing the lawn. Can you hear noise at all? Is it anything problematic?
No, there was a little bit back, but they do. It filters. What I think they have a noise reduction on this that works pretty
Okay,
well. So
great,
yeah.
great.
Okay.
Yeah, so Reed is also very happy to be here, and Radiant Garden says my pleasure, with a little love heart and an emoticon with a love heart with eyes and a little face, and then I guess is it hands or shoulders, like oh shucks, I guess maybe. So it's very nice to have you both here engaged online. That's lovely. It really makes a difference, actually. It's
Well, it
surprising
is.
how much of a difference it makes.
And I'm thinking about maybe going back to Insight Timer here, but we have to not mention the YU term on
Yeah,
there because they don't allow any mention of any platforms. But I
sure.
think that's a possibility now with this new computer.
Okay.
Okay, so Wendy, what is your let's sit up and reflect on a meditation session. Do you even consider time? I know I just set a timer usually, or I say I'm going to meditate for 40 minutes, and then as it gets close, but moment by moment, this is one variable that I don't really pay much attention to. I think it comes into place when we measure things, right? I think time is established in our world to measure distance and the rate of speed, right, from one point to another, like you mentioned earlier. So in meditation, when we're dealing with moment after moment, that is kind of in relation or opposition, or how does it correlate to meditation session duration? You know what I mean? So if we divide our experience into moment to moment to moment, right? Each moment of the in breath, each moment of the out breath, each moment of the pause between breaths, it's a different experience than saying, okay, well, that's been 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and just my experience of time. I don't really have a sense of time so much either. Other when other people are involved, and I have to be somewhere, then I need to look at a clock or bring a watch or look at the clock to know what time it is in order for them. Because out now that I'm out of the corporate work world, and then deadlines. I want to talk about deadlines too. I know this is a lot, but when I really notice is when I'm up against the deadline. Then we talk about rushing, and then we can talk about deadlines and rushing and pressure and things like this. Or somebody like me that's probably like an old hippie or beach bum now, where I just don't really have any kind of obligations. Probably people think I'm a slacker, and what's this guy doing? I mean, he's a bum or whatever. So I think that's enough to throw out there too within the
I was just,
meditation session. Then yeah. Go.
I was just thinking, there's a guy I know, he's just a very general acquaintance, and a theory is he's dementing, but he's got this wicked sense of humor, and he comes out with these, and we're not sure how much of it is the dementia and how much of it is him just kind of being a bit dodgy on that one. And he says, a deadline. I mean, the thing about a deadline is, how do you deal with that with the council? You can't just bury it like it's dead, it's a line. Well, how do you bury it? You've got to get permissions from the council. You can't just do it anywhere. So I thought it was just fantastic. A great way of thinking about deadlines. It's like, what are you going to do with the deadline? I mean, where do you park? Where do you freeze? Do you put it in the freezer? Do you put it? I just,
That's great. Yeah.
it's just, he's just so sharp. He has these fantastic ways of looking at it. So, look, I get caught up on that, and I was just thinking, I'm quite tired, like not just today, but just generally, I feel a bit emotionally drawn out. And in a few weeks' time, I'm going away for a meditation retreat, so I'm like holding my breath, sort of a little bit, for the next few weeks' time, so that for those days, 6 days, I can be there and I can just, you know, relax and have no sense of time, except that I know that when I get there, I'm just going to be like, okay, so what time's the breakfast, lunch, dinner? Do I have my timer? Do I have my, like, what do I do? What do I do? And then where am I supposed to be? And what if I've got a problem? And so I, it's not like I go, I've got to get there, and then I'm there, and then what do I do? And where have I got to be? That we have this huge regulation, and it permeates everything. It permeates the mind to such an extent. And I do like that saying, stop the world, I want to get off, because I often think, stop the world, I want to get off.
This is really good. It was there was a low point in my life, and it's just like I wanted the world to stop, right? Because it was too much, and there is no option to do that. And it's to be stuck in that perception is really kind of super disempowering, right? Like I can't control anything really. I want it to stop, but it's not going to. Where can I get just like 5 minutes of reprieve from all this? because it won't, it doesn't slow down. And then, that is dukkha to me, that right there, right in the face. And wow, it's a really powerful notion. And yes, people are, they talk like a slave to the clock. I think this is kind of like a saying in English, right? This whole notion, this big picture perception of time, it seems like it's an enemy a lot of the times. We're always fighting against it. We never have enough. We can't control it. Time waits for no man. But how can we make a time an ally? Is it possible to look at time as an ally? And I see the wisdom in this, but I haven't actualized that or realized it yet, because there's so much of a habit pattern that, I'm up against the clock. That's another one, right? Racing to beat the clock. So this notion of, pressure and deadlines and have to get things done at a certain time. And, and some people take it really seriously and some people don't. And there's a clash between that too. Like, let's say, when you're in the medical industry and someone's life depends on a certain amount of administering a certain medical procedure in a certain amount of time in a certain way, that's really important, right? Journalists are up against deadlines pretty much all the time, and they're burned out and a mess a lot of times. I'm trying to think of someone else that just pretty much operates all on deadlines. If you're in a university, right, you have a paper or an exam, and so that's another deadline that most people have dealt with in the schooling system. And because that's the nice thing in meditation, we don't have these deadlines, right? You can allot a certain amount of time to your meditation, even if it's just 1 minute. And it doesn't have to be a huge hard fast deadline unless something else is coming up. And how many times have we had on our schedule, oh, something's over a little bit too early or runs a little bit too late, and then it's, oh, that we have this notion it's going to throw off my whole day. And then and then how is the heart and mind with that, or that notion of just um, this in we see something's coming, like we can see the train wreck coming, and we can't really stop it, and and then how are we with it when we can't control it and we can't get our way? Yeah, that's a really important spiritual question. Yeah.
I was just thinking about, I think one of my sort of most best moments in meditation, really, I was listening a lot to Eckhart Tolle's talk. It was an interview with Krista Tippett in, I think, 2007 or something like that. And I had it on repeat. So I was listening to it a lot on the spirit of things. It was great, great. Yeah, I loved it. And he said, there is no other time. There is only this. There is not the future. There is not the past. There is just this. I mean, it took me about 50 times before I actually got it. But yeah, this idea that, I should be done, I should be finished this by now. Well, you can't be finished it before you have finished it. It's not possible to should have done it by now, because you are where you are, and things are where they are. And there is no this sort of fictitious time that we make things up as if it's in some separate reality which is non-existent. It's like, well, we may as well say, I don't know, pink unicorns are in that time, because none of it is real. Sorry to tell you about the pink unicorns. I don't mean to be rude, but I don't think they're real.
Well,
So
not unless you get a dose of acid, I guess, but or enter a certain type of imaginary land. But yeah,
yeah,
Wendy,
yeah.
go ahead. You're continue. Yeah.
Oh no, just, and then I realized there is nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. And I was speaking with my friend at the gym, and she's manages the gym, and she's getting all these things done. She's frazzled and exhausted, and I've got to get this done, that done, this done, this done. And I just said, the only place you can be is here. There is actually no other place you can be. And it really shifted everything. Now, that doesn't mean to say that I don't go, I've got to get this done, I've got to get that done. But it does mean that every now and again I go, there is only this time. Where I am is where I am. There is nowhere else I can possibly be other than just in this moment. It was such a fantastic moment of clarity when I finally just got it.
These perceptions are of past, present, and future. When what really drove that home for me is, when we're in meditation, a lot of times the mind is projecting into the future or in the past, remembering the past. And what come to realize that at least this one perception of viewing things, what Wendy's talking about, is the past is over and it's not coming back. The way it, every moment is unique, and it's never going to happen this way again. And when we're stuck in the past or remembering the past and it seems so real, it's still happening right here, right now. And
Yeah.
it's in our mind. It's happening here in the mind. It might seem like it's in the past, but actually that memory recall is happening right here and now. Same way with planning in the future, anticipating future things. It might seem so real. We might visualize the future and it might unfold that way due to habit patterns. The matter of the fact, though, right, it's actually occurring right here, right now. A perception or thought, consciousness in the mind happening now. It hasn't. That's yet to come. The future is not here yet, and it's uncertain. So this way of viewing time, and then we get down to what is this present moment even, and can we even let go of that? If we let go of that, if that's not even here, too, or how
Well, what do you?
much we
Okay.
cling even to the present moment. That's it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't
Mhm.
even know how can you cling to the present moment. You might
Yeah.
try to fix time and
Hmm.
say, well, that was then, but you you aren't in. There is no the now. There is no the
Yeah.
moment. There is only just this. There's nothing else.
Exactly. So even this, is there, how much can we even let go of this, And I don't know, but I mean, yeah, it's like, are we clinging even to our experience now? You know what I mean? Of Anyway, I don't know. That's kind of more of a deep thing that needs to be looked at in meditation. But
We can do it
going
next time.
possibly when we going back into our meditation sessions, and instead of viewing our experience by, okay, I got to be here at this time, this has been this much time, what happens moment by moment. And as our practice progresses, we can notice more moments after more moments, right? More subtle and subtle things that happen moment by moment in this momentary experience. How many more times am I going to say that, by the way? We perceive this time, we can perceive experience in this manner, instead of necessarily measuring things the way we do in our external world by, I need to go to the store at 5 o'clock and then I need to be home by 6 o'clock. And then we're always going from one destination to the other and just ignoring everything else, basically, to get from point A to point B and then to point C and then point D. And but now I need to go, it never ends. And that's the other notion, that's another definition of dukkha. Nothing is ever completed, and how okay are we with that?
As you were talking, I was thinking about there is this idea that uh, you can't possibly have traffic congestion because this is bad, because it holds people up and it stops productivity. I was like, well, actually, congestion has some benefits in that people drive slowly, so you have fewer collisions. So therefore, you save lives by having actually a poorer, what they call level of service. So there is an idea about when you build a road, and the reason they make them fast so drivers can go quickly on them is because that is somehow saving time, and they've put a dollar value on that, or Danish crown value on that, and that's how they measure whether a road is going to be viable, which is stupid because there's a whole lot of other things that go into it. It's a very, very narrow framework of way to look at it. And so I think what I notice about whether it's an intrinsic sense of time, I am, there's nothing else here, it's just me here like this, or whether it's something that it feels externally imposed, like exam timetables, university studies, or I've got to get to the shops before it closes, or whatever it is. That's an external thing. So there is a difference there just in those two. Yeah, definitely. But we're at time, Josh.
That's a good one, Wendy. Yes, we are. And how do you feel about roundabouts? Maybe that's the answer to all our problems on roads,
Oh no, you
roundabouts.
do. You have to be careful about roundabouts because it depends on the design. you you don't want it depends. It depends. It depends.
On ramps and off ramps, I'm sure there's things going on with those that are just yeah. All right. Well, I think yeah, wrap this up. Thank you all for listening, joining, and yeah, we'd love to hear comments about your experiences of time, wisdom around time. Gripes and complaints. If you find out where I can write a letter to the time agency and where I can send my complaints about daylight savings time in the states, all this stuff. Yeah, whatever. Reach
I
out.
live in a I live in a state which doesn't have daylight saving, so we never have to worry about it. It's so
Some
good.
rational, wise
Yeah.
people there.
No, well, they were poo-pooed at the time. So, just a heads up, I want to say, Radiant Guardians and Ms. Reed, thank you very much for joining us. It's so lovely to have you online with us as we are here, and if you're still here, look, we've got 4 people watching us, so I think whoever it is bumped off has come. So that's great, and it's you guys have a great weekend wherever you are, and Josh, you have a great weekend too.
Well, I just can echo that again for you as well, Wendy. So may you all experience the most best optimal time for the most best optimal reasons and chill.